Today we are talking about vans, and more specifically, we are talking about building them. If you guys are new to my channel, my name is Max, and at the start of 2025, I purchased a Ford box van to turn into a camper. This has been a long time dream of mine. It's something I've been thinking about for such a long time. And now it feels absolutely crazy to finally be starting a van build. But building a van is not easy. This is the first time I've ever tried to do a van build, and I have so much to learn. When I first bought the van, I knew that building out a van would be a massive project. But now that I actually own the van and have started the build, I think I'm starting to realize that it's an even bigger project than I initially imagined. From long days spent actually working on and building the van to endless hours at the computer, watching YouTube videos, researching, and trying to create some type of plan, I think it's pretty safe to say this van build is the biggest project I've decided to take on. At the time of filming this video, I am a couple months into the van build, and today I want to talk about my experience so far. I'm going to share some of the progress I've made. I'll talk a little bit about the physical and mental struggles of just building out a van in general, and then we'll wrap it up by talking about why, despite all of these hardships, I am still so excited about this project. Thanks so much for tuning into today's video, and let's go ahead and get started. I know I've mentioned this multiple times on my channel, but for anyone who might be new, the van I own is a 2003 Ford E350 cutaway box van. It's got a 10-foot box on the back of it, and I think it's such an underrated platform. If you're interested, I actually do have a video on my channel talking all about why I decided to buy a box van, so I'll link that in the description of this video. We're gonna start off today by talking about some progress I've made with the box van. I bought this van at the start of 2025. It was over 4 hours away, and I got it back home around the middle of January. Now, I didn't start working on the van until around February just because there was a lot of snow and cold temperatures, so the van was kind of on hold while we got through some of that rough weather. After about 2 months of working on the van, this is what I've accomplished so far. The first problem I had with the van, the first thing I wanted to address, was the fact that there were water leaks. I knew that before I was going to build anything on the inside, I had to get that taken care of. It took me a couple of very long days, but I cleaned and scrubbed the roof, removed all of the old sealant, and then resealed everything. I have a video on my channel of this entire process if you're interested in seeing it. Now, because of all of these old water leaks, there was a lot of water damage on the inside, mainly to the wood floors. I'm guessing these floors were pretty old. They might have even been the original floors to the box van, but either way, they were definitely due for replacement. The front sections had gotten super wet and the wood was pretty rotten up front, so I knew I had to get that replaced. On top of that, the floors honestly smelled really awful. I think just all of the moisture was kind of trapped in there, and once I got those out, it kind of got rid of the weird smell to my box van, so another plus side to that process as well. Removing the floors was a massive project. I went around with a pry bar and a hammer and ripped everything out, and it was a lot of fun. No, it was not. But I knew it was a necessary step, and it felt really good to get those out. During this process, I also removed the front wall. The van did have a sliding door with a pass-through when I bought it, but I felt like it would feel a lot more open and more like a van if I took that wall out. This added another day of work, but I am so happy I made the decision to do that. Once the floors were out, I did a little bit of work to the frame. I cleaned off some of the surface rust and then sprayed it with a black spray paint, hopefully just to help with some rust prevention in the future. Next, we moved on to one of the scariest projects, which involved cutting a massive hole into the side of my van. This project felt pretty complicated and required teaching myself how to weld, but after a few days of work, I was able to install a new entrance, including a self-built step and RV door. After that, I moved on to installing all new flooring. I'm not going to go into specifics about how I built the floors because I have a separate video talking all about that, but the floors are insulated and weatherproofed with an RV underbelly. And that leads me right up to today, where I am currently working on another project. I'm not going to talk too much about it, but it has to do with the rear door. So so definitely stay tuned. That video will be coming soon. One of the hardest parts I've found with this van build so far is just knowing the order to do things. There are definitely a couple of things I wish I had done before installing the flooring, a couple of those being installing an external gray water tank and maybe a small diesel tank as well for something like a diesel heater. Because this is my first van build, there is just so much to think about. I feel like my mind is always coming up with new ideas, wondering if certain things will work, wondering how to do different things. And sometimes it's only after doing things like installing a floor that you realize there are other things you wish you would have done first. But I think making those mistakes and learning is such an important part of building a van. So that is a little update on some of the progress I've made. I feel like I've been really productive so far, but I also feel like it's just taking a lot longer to plan things out than I initially imagined. On top of building the van, I'm also trying to keep up on YouTube video editing, and I also work a full-time job as well. So it's pretty safe to say that my life has been pretty crazy since starting this van build. Let's talk a little bit about the physical workload of building out a van. There's a lot of time spent planning things out and designing the van, but then you actually have to go and build it. Some of these days actually working on the van can be pretty intense, and partly that is just my personality. Once I start a project, I have a hard time stopping, and this means that I'll go for 10 to 12 hours straight without breaks, without eating anything. So I definitely will admit that I am part of the problem here. Even despite that though, whether it's ripping out floors, scraping putty, or cutting plywood, building a van is a lot of work. My entire weekends have pretty much been spent working on the van, and after a couple 12-hour days back to back, I am pretty exhausted. Even if I had more time to spend working on the van, I don't even know if my body could keep up. So honestly, only having the weekends available to work on the van might be a little bit of a blessing in disguise. So what does a typical day look like when I'm working on the van? Well, for me, it starts around 8 or 9 a.m. I usually wake up, get my cameras ready, and get right to work. Now at this point, I usually get sucked in and I'll work on the van straight until 7, 8, or 9 p.m. I know this might sound horrible, but this 12-hour stretch usually does not include any breaks. Once I wrap up my project for the day, usually around 8 or 9 p.m., I come inside, shower, and eat a ridiculous amount of food. At this point in the day, I'm pretty much making up for all the 3 meals that I missed earlier. Because I really only have 2 days to work on the van, I'm always trying to maximize the little time that I do have, and I think that's also part of the reason why I work for such long hours. Starting this van build, I was certainly expecting the physical workload. I knew that building a van was going to be physically intense. But what I honestly did not expect is the toll building and designing a van would take on me mentally. I think it's safe to say that the amount of planning, research, watching videos, reading forums is at least 10 times more than I imagined. For every project I'm working on, there are hundreds of little things to figure out. Let's take a look at the subfloor as an example of this. First, I had to figure out what type of plywood to use. Do I use sheets? Do I use tongue and groove? Do I use some type of hardwood? Once I decided on plywood, I had to figure out what thickness of plywood to use. Then there's the installation. What type of installation? How thick should the installation be? How do I attach the installation to the floor? How do I even attach the plywood to the frame? But then the bottom of the box is exposed. I don't just want bare plywood, so how do I even weather seal this? Then there's the step. I gotta figure out how to cut the plywood and subfloor to fit around the step too. The list goes on and on and on, and every project goes like this as well. I think what also makes it difficult is that each project I do doesn't necessarily have a right or wrong way of doing it. And because it is my first time doing a van build, having this many options isn't always super helpful. Not ever having a clear black or white answer is definitely something I struggle with and am working on with this van build, because I'm definitely a bit of a perfectionist. Some of these things I'm trying might be a complete failure, but there's not really any other way to know until I try. And trying new things, messing up, failing, as hard as it might be, are great ways to learn. The reality with this van build, because it is my first time, is that I'm always doubting myself, questioning if there might be a better way to do something, or wondering if I might have messed up. I just don't have a lot of experience with building in general, but this van build has given me the perfect opportunity to learn. So now we've talked a little bit about the physical and mental difficulties of trying to build a van. Trying to balance a full-time job, keep up on editing videos, while also designing and building out a van is pretty much consuming my entire life at this point. So why am I still doing it? Well, building a van has been a long time dream of mine. I still remember the day my mom got me a book called Van Life, Your Home on the Road. Super awesome book, by the way. It has a ton of pictures of awesome vans and campers in it. I would spend hours looking through this book, flipping through all of the pictures of people's vans, school buses, ambulances, whatever it might be. Seeing all of these people's rigs, seeing them out on adventures was so inspiring to me. Well, fast forward 6 to 7 years later, and I still found myself doing the same thing, this time in the form of scrolling Facebook Marketplace. Well, when I found the box van, it was one of the first vehicles I found that was both in my budget and kind of fit all of my requirements, so I jumped on the opportunity right when it came up. What I love with the box van is that the build is entirely mine. I get to build, create, and design this box van to be exactly how I like, and I absolutely love that freedom. Like I mentioned, I have never built out a van before. I honestly don't even really know what I'm doing, but one thing that's for certain is that every day I work on the box van, I am learning new things. All of these lessons, good or bad, successful or not, are teaching me things about both building a van and myself. Being in my early 20s, I think it is so amazing to have a project that is teaching me both useful, practical skills, but also life skills. This van build is teaching me so much more than just how to use new tools or wire lights. It's teaching me about patience, self-reliance, getting through difficulties, and how to continue showing up even when things aren't working out. I hope that one day I'll find myself waking up in the van in a scenic location and just feeling an overwhelming amount of joy and satisfaction knowing that I built this van from scratch by myself. That feeling, that excitement of getting to go new places, create new memories, and share my adventures and hopefully inspire you guys as well, that is what keeps me going with this van build. So yeah, building a van is hard. It's exhausting, confusing, overwhelming, stressful, but it's also meaningful. I have never had a project that has given me such an opportunity to learn. And like I talked about, building a van teaches you more than just how to build a van. It teaches you things about yourself, and that is invaluable. If you're on a similar journey, if you're building a van of your own, or maybe thinking of building a van someday, just know that this process is hard. It is not easy. It is a massive task to take on. But what's so awesome about the van community is that when you're doing a build, traveling, wherever you may be, you are never alone. Now, I am still at the very start of this box van build, so if you're interested in following along and seeing the entire process of turning this from a work and construction vehicle into a tiny home on wheels, definitely don't forget to like and subscribe. It's a completely free way to help support my channel as well, and your support means so much to me. That is going to wrap it up for today's video. Thanks again for watching, and I will catch you guys in the next one.